Good afternoon and welcome to our Pinellas County Emergency Management Summit. We are grateful for you all being here. So let's talk a little bit about why we are here. We're here to work together, becoming a stronger, more resilient community through community service and disaster preparedness. I just want to go over some of our housekeeping rules for those of us that's in the room and in person. For those of you that's home, resting comfortably in your wherever you are, establishments, don't worry about this. But if you need to use the restroom tonight, it's going to be down the hall and down to your left. Make sure you get some water, hydrate. Our hosts were kind enough to put refreshments on the table. So sorry for those that's not here, you won't receive that. Okay. This is a webinar and it is being recorded. The link will be made available via YouTube and sent out to everyone that was registered. We encourage you to participate via the chat feature throughout the program and feel free to include your comments here in the chat. For those of you joining us in person, we have provided index cards for you to submit your questions, and we will collect them before the Q&A portion of the program. So if you need additional cards, stack up on them, get those questions out to us, and we will get back to you. Please raise your hand either in Zoom or in person, and we will be sure for those of you to be recognized. Finally, the Community Emergency Management will be sending out a full guide with all the resources discussed in tonight's program and a link to access the webinar recording. So to start off our event, we're going to ask Major Ted Morris to please give us a moment of reflections. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's bow for a word of prayer. Our Father, in your word, you told us about the need for preparation. You told us about animals who prepare for the seasons. You told us about the need to prepare when building structures. And tonight, we also look at preparedness. Thank you for those on this panel who are experts in preparedness as we prepare for what may be inclement weather these next few months. Thank you for their knowledge and their experience. Thank you for each person here tonight as well, online and here in person. And may we all learn from what we hear from those who come with that knowledge. Bless us. Make it be a productive time for all of us tonight as we prepare our own hearts and minds and our families and our organizations for this next season. For it's in your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Major, for that moment of reflection. Now, I want to give a little introduction of myself. I'm Elizabeth Siplin. I will be your moderator for tonight. I am retired military police. After 27 years of service, I was the emergency management director, sergeant major at Fort Lee as I retired. So I'm very well versed in emergency management services. I currently own my own company, Impact Solutions, and I'm the interim pastor at New Faith Free Methodist Church. And I do want to give a shout out that I have a 23-year-old graduating on the 22nd of May from the College of William and Mary in chemistry. So I'm a proud mom also. So tonight, I know emergency management is very important. It's very critical. But since we have been in a pandemic and shut up for the last year and a half, I really want to make this lighthearted. I want to make it open so the panelists can freely discuss and have an openness about the emergencies that's coming forward. So we're going to take a minute for each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll start to this end. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yaridis Garcia. I am the Community Planning Manager at the Juvenile Welfare Board, and it is a pleasure for me to be here tonight.
I will introduce in just a moment. Hi, I'm Mary Burrell. I am with Emergency Management of Pinellas County, and I am the whole community program lead.
I'm Kevin Chinault with the Salvation Army of Upper Pinellas County. I'm the Director of Social Services and also a certified trainer with the Salvation Army Disaster Services.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Shermata. I am on staff at Calvary Church as the Director of Local Missions, and just love the opportunity to sit with y'all and talk about ways that we can serve our community.
Thank you. We'd like to thank each one of our panelists for being here and agreeing to be part of this event tonight. Now we want to take a moment to have a special thank you to the support staff who's assisting with the technical aspects. Ms. Jess McCracken, who is part of the whole community specialist with Pinellas County Emergency Management. Thank you. We also have Joanne Reach, community planner and the faith liaison for JWB on site. She will be helping with our chats and our questions on tonight. So thank you again for joining us. We are here this evening. This program will be broken down into before, during, and after the storm to discuss the preparations during every stage of the storm. So now we want to take a minute to introduce our keynote speaker, Kevin Smith. He's the owner of Rule 1 Consulting. Kevin Smith established Rule 1 Consulting after serving as the director of Department of Homeland Security Center for Faith and Opportunity Initiatives. Kevin is a certified emergency management manager who has worked with initiatives, local, state, and federal government and nonprofit organizations for more than 25 years. We'd like to welcome Kevin now, and great to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to be careful because I've been told what I lack in intelligence, I make up in volume. And with this hot mic, I might be blaring people out of the room and online. So I apologize to all my friends who are online out there. I actually thrive off of interacting with the audience. If I tell a joke that goes flat, I really don't have a whole lot of faces. So I got to turn every now and then and look at you guys online so I can actually see if the joke goes well. So I'll try and do that all night. And then I'll be at 7 to 9 down the street doing a comedy club routine later. Actually, no, I won't, just in case. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am because I think it may make a difference. I did just come out of the previous administration where I focused on building the faith and community initiatives where we actually were working to maximize the power of the faith community across the country. I was honored to be able to serve in that capacity. It was a really cool opportunity where I got to go around and talk to faith leaders and talk about how cool they are. There's nothing more exciting for me than be able to talk about the faith community because I grew up in the faith community. I actually grew up as a pastor's son. I grew up with the Salvation Army. And in 1996, as I was wanting to be a meteorologist, while I was in school to go be a meteorologist, I quickly found out I wasn't smart enough. So I actually had an opportunity to jump into emergency management. That's where I started in 1996, my first disaster after I got hired to work on hurricane preparedness was the Value Jet crash in the Florida Everglades in May of 1996. What I found is that no matter how we prepare for incidents and disasters, and we're going to talk about hurricane preparedness today, regardless of those things, we always need to be in a state of readiness. And what we're going to talk about may focus on hurricanes and talk about getting our congregations together, our members of our churches and our community together. The truth is, we're getting ready for hurricane preparedness because June 1st marks that big day for all of us Floridians. But the truth is, we need to think about preparedness because no matter what you prepare for, something else might be there. Who would have thunk last year? Sorry, that's a very Georgia thing to say. I apologize. Who would have thought last year, before, let's say, December in 2019, if I've got this right, who would have thought that we would have been responding to a pandemic? And I can tell you the emergency management community was focused on a whole lot of things after 2018 and all of the hurricanes, all of the devastation. In Florida, we were working on all of the, how are we going to be ready for a Hurricane Michael type of event? And as we prepared for it, we get this left hook that comes in, and it's called the pandemic. So again, as I talk through some of the things today, I want to hit kind of an overarching view of things that we as congregations need to be prepared for. And I want to make sure that I'm talking to you as the faith leaders in the community, both online and here in the room today, because I'm very excited about what we do. And I like talking and bragging about the faith community. So over my shoulder, I know it's going to be a little hard for you to see. We're going to zoom in. People don't really understand the faith community. You know, I mean, if you watch media today, they will tell you that the faith community is shrinking, right? They will tell you that the faith community is not near as relevant as they used to be. You'll probably hear that. I'm going to squeeze over here so you can not only see me, well, actually, it's probably better you don't see me, but I'll get a little closer so we can zoom in and we can, you can get the screen here. But even though you're hearing culturally that the church or the faith community is getting smaller, still 74% of Americans still say that the faith community plays an important part of their lives. Now, I've gone to these summits. I've gone all around the country. I find this kind of comical because I learned a new term as I was moving around the country, and I learned the term a creaster. Now, anybody know what a creaster is? A creaster. It's the people who come to church at Christmas and Easter, or whatever religious practice. It's those people that show up with the family that one time of year that still say that they're tied to faith. And when they answer this question, many of those people still kind of say that they're associated with the faith. Now, they may not be our faithful attendees every week in our days of worship, but they are still absolutely relevant because they still hold faith dear and it influences their lives. As a matter of fact, 60% of America's community says they turn to their faith leaders in times of crisis, especially in times of disaster. Now, being a preacher's kid, I know what that means. It's not just when there's hurricanes. It means when a pipe breaks in the house and they're looking for a plumber, they call their pastor. They also call their pastor on the birth of their son or daughter because they want to share that joy, right? And then at 18, they call them and try to figure out how to raise that child and figure out how to get them back out of the house. So, but why do they do that? Why do they interact with their faith leaders the way that they do? And this goes across all faiths. The role that faith plays in people's lives, it's because it's a matter of trust. You see, we struggle with who to trust today because you get so many different flows of information that people are even more so relying on faith leaders to influence how they behave and how they make good, strong decisions. If you're like me, you may have gone through career. I've talked about this for years. And when we talk about a curriculum for kids in school, when we want to get a message across, we say, how can we get on the school's agenda to talk about this issue, whether it's disaster preparedness, whether it's CPR and first aid. And there are over 105 places of education around the country, high schools, elementary schools, colleges, 105,000 across the country. But there are 345,000 houses of worship. Maybe the education isn't where we should, all the boards of education who have so much on their plate, maybe that's not where our focus should be. Maybe we should be looking even more into the faith community. And that's what we're going to talk about is your house of worship being important to helping to get this preparedness message across to your congregations. So, but why? Again, we talked about the importance of that faith leader that they play. But they have a mission to serve. They are there in your community. They want to serve each other. It's a tenet of all of our faiths, is to serve humankind. All of them, regardless of what their practice is, what day they worship, serving others is a tenet of all of the major 6 religions in the United States. They're trustful. They come with authority, legitimacy, and people are looking for that these days. Resources. They come with facilities. I stand here at the Calvary Church. It is an amazing church, large facility that many of you would know during a hurricane season, they actually become our shelters. They become places of refuge for people during times of disaster. And if they have one thing They have tons of those resources across the country. I said 345,000 houses of worship, but that's the facility itself that may have, that's the site itself that may have 10 different facilities on that site. That is a massive resource when we talk about times of disaster. So we also talk about knowledge. They come with knowledge. They come with their own networks. I know as a member of the Salvation Army, in very tough times, during times of disaster, we knew that we could call around the nation and have resources to come in to help us. In fact, it happened multiple times. And I had the honor of responding from Florida to other locations, not randomly, not just showing up on a disaster site, but because my organization called for resources. That's what the faith community brings, is a connection around the country to help to come in and take and fight during times of crisis. So they have programs like human services, social service programs. They have staying power. The faith community doesn't just rush in during the next disaster. They're there serving needs in the community every day before the disaster occurs. And they're going to be there for the long term to help people as they recover from life's tragedy. We're going to talk about hurricanes, but I want to say we use the term houses of worship, but we also need to make sure the faith community is much larger than that. It's insurance companies, it's large denominations have large influence in the medical field. Many of our nonprofits are faith-based institutions. Many of our, whether you talk about the Salvation Army, our education institutions like Wheaton University, talk about many of our social service organizations are also faith-based organizations. Obviously, it's a role that they play in serving the community. So I throw out all this stuff. Yes, they're important. Yes, they're important. But let's put a little number behind this for a second. Do you know in 2016, I think was the last time this research was done. Do you know that $1.2 trillion was the value of what the faith community brought to our economy? 1.2 trillion. That's not chump change. That's not, oh yeah, those people of faith do something. No, they contribute to the economic stability of our country. Why would you not be talking to the faith community? Now I make this sound like I'm preaching to the choir. I got everybody up there nodding their heads on the screen. They're all like, yeah, we're important. But sometimes you got to know yourself as a member of that faith community, how important you are. Now, I know none of you deal with this. I'm very open about my own life insecurities. By the way, we're not going to have a session here. I don't need therapy for this. But we all have our little insecurities, right? We always deal with, am I really that important? I mean, do I really have value when I step into, do you really think we only have 2 or 3 volunteers? Do you really think we have a role in this disaster? And the truth of the matter is, we have a massive role in our economy and our day-to-day service that keep this nation going. And we need to recognize it, especially in times of disaster, how we can contribute. I talk a little bit about threats against houses of worship. I don't want to go too far in this, but I want to let you know that we are at a time where houses of worship, many faiths, many groups are being targeted with threats of violence. I don't have to share that. You see it on the news. You see it often. It's a tragedy, but we have to recognize that while we think about preparedness, that we're not just thinking about hurricanes, we're thinking about how do we prepare and build our congregations and our faith community to be resilient? What programs are out there to help them do this? And while we work on building that resilience, what are the other things that benefit because we become a resilient congregation because of the routine threats? What happens when we build that capability for one threat and it also helps us in another way? And I want to just make sure I give you some tools because I get really excited. I could talk for hours on this and I only have 2 hours to talk tonight. I'm just kidding. I'm not talking that long. But we talk about being targets of violence. And we want to make sure that we're not talking about people from outside causing harm to us. Sometimes it's within our congregations. It's within a domestic violence issue at our church. It's within our children that we often care for. We run children's programs and we serve the community and we then become a target and what we are known in government as a soft target. So we have to look at ways to help us. And there are programs out there that can help you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some grant opportunities that may have missed this year, but are going to be available for next year. But I want to talk to you for a second about just being connected with your law enforcement. You know, I mean, we are very good at saying the law enforcement is very important, or at least we have been in our history of the faith community working with our law enforcement. But I do think a lot of times we've started to disconnect ourselves from the role that we play in helping to support the law enforcement, whether that means helping law enforcement or whether it means helping our congregations to be more connected with law enforcement. I've just been given this cut signal and I ain't even halfway through, so I need to speed up here. We need to look at ways to engage better with our law enforcement community. I know last year there was this great initiative. It's been around for a while. It's called Faith in Blue Weekend. And it was an opportunity for us to come out and work alongside and talk to our people about the role that the law enforcement has within our communities, and help to provide and be a resource to help our congregations know where they can turn and that there's a safe place to go when they need help. I won't go too much more into that, but it is a valuable program that I would encourage our faith community to look at ways that they can partner with law enforcement to help bring more stability in times of crisis rather than less. I'm not going to flip through this. These are some of the slides that I talk about the strategy and where the faith community fits in, but I will hit some of the things that I talk about, those insecurities that I have. I can tell you I was raised in South Georgia. I had a inner city church experience growing up with a father who was a pastor within the Salvation Army. I knew the inner city community, and I didn't worship and see separation of color when I worship on a Sunday morning. I grew up in a community that I was very well integrated with many different cultural backgrounds. And I could give you a lot of those cultural backgrounds that I grew up in South Georgia that makes me look a little weird these days when I'm in different communities. And if fried cornbread isn't on your list of great meals, I'm telling you, it is one of my favorite pastimes. And we can talk about that at some other time. But I will tell you that all of those things, I always felt comfortable with anyone in any room to have a conversation. I didn't feel any insecurity. But in the past few years, I've been asked to go to different environments, and all of a sudden that little insecurity started creeping in, because I didn't have a problem with the Muslim Islamic faith. I didn't have a problem walking into a Buddhist temple at first until I thought about it, and I said, am I supposed to take my shoes off? Or do I take my hat off? Am I supposed to wear a jacket? What do I do when I get in there? And it wasn't because I had anything against them. It was because I was worried about me. One of the things that we need to do is educate ourselves, and we need some way to help us with that. I know that FEMA has a great program. It's called the Independent Study Course 505. It's about building cultural literacy to start to understand some of the other faith community that, quite frankly, it's a tip sheet. And it will help to give you a way to reach out to other faiths in your community. Instead of being insecure and not knowing what to do when you walk in a mosque, you actually can go in and engage. Because folks, I'm telling you, the power of the faith community when we come together in times of disaster is very misunderstood, definitely undervalued, because I've seen it firsthand. When we come together, there's very little we can't accomplish together. And these tip sheets are one of those ways that will help us as a faith community here in Pinellas County, but all around the country, that we come together, start working together to help to serve our brothers and sisters during times of disaster. Now, I'd like for everybody to read along with me the next slide. I'm kidding. I know you can't see it. I can't see it either, but I will tell you that the reason I put this up here, not for you to read it right now, but to know it is a resource of ways that you can reach out to other faiths in this community, but in other communities that you go to, and help provide leadership for connecting with other faiths and bringing them together. This is a resource of all the different 6 major faiths in the United States, and there's actually some other resources there as well. Here's what I want to make sure before they really pull me off with the gong in the background and tell me I've got to step away. I want to make sure you know how to value your resources. Now, I've told you that you have value. I've told you that economically you contribute $1.2 trillion to the economy of the United States. What I want you to know is you actually have a tangible value of the services you have in times of disaster. You just need to account for it and help Pinellas County Emergency Management come together and bring that to them so they can value and champion the work that you have done. Real quick math here. I'm going to give every volunteer that's out there I'm going to be able to calculate the value of every hour that they serve, somewhere between $20 and $30 an hour, the value of the value of work that they provide during a disaster actually can help the local government respond to that disaster. Now, complicated math here. What I'm going to tell you is it has a huge value to your community to be able to recover after a disaster. And the fact in Joplin, Missouri, in the tornado that devastated their town, it was almost $100 million of damage to that town. And the local community had to pay back to FEMA. It's all how the structure works in emergency management. The local community had to pay back 25% of that cost. That's $25 million. Do you know that they offset that amount that had to pay back just in donated resources because of the volunteers and the staff that worked in that disaster? So one of the takeaways I want you to know is the value you bring. I've said it 1,000 times or 100 times in the last few minutes, but I want to let you know that you may have come in here not knowing the value of you as the faith community, but when you walk out of here, Pinellas County Emergency Management knows the value you bring. They want to brag about you and talk about that, but you need to tell them what you're doing. And you need to start telling them what you can do to help to maximize the power of the faith community in Pinellas County. There's a few other things that you want to know as resources for you. When a disaster strikes, your house of worship is damaged. And in a declaration by the federal government, I won't get into all the rules of it, there are specific declarations in major or catastrophic disasters that may make your house of worship eligible to recover costs for damages. There were multiple houses of worship across Puerto Rico, 4,000 as a matter of fact, that were able to apply and receive assistance from damages in 2018 to Hurricane Maria. There are also houses of worship across Florida that have also been able to leverage that program, because it is important that our faith community is back up and serving the community quickly after a disaster, because I'm going to say it one more time, the value of the faith community is often understated. So there's some programs out there. So you can take this home, DHS.gov/faith. We made it very easy for anybody to go. You don't have to think about it real hard. It's DHS.gov/faith. Many of the programs and grants that I've talked about here for eligible for houses of worship in Pinellas County and all over the country, they're all listed there. There's tools and resources for you to be able to talk about safety and security of your congregations, to work on your disaster plans, to learn from each other. A lot of these links that I've put up here are on that website. Sample plans for how you can actually go step by step in a checklist and talk about safety and security for your house of worship. There's even information. Now, many of you may not know this. This year alone, Congress put aside $180 million for houses of worship to become more resilient from acts of hate or from terrorism, and building resilience in our faith community, nonprofits as a whole. That is an increase from only 2 years ago, from 60 million to 180 million available for nonprofits. Now, here's my answer, and I'm not going to ask anybody to raise your hand, although I'm going to watch you and see your reaction. How many people, how many houses of worship in Pinellas County applied for that grant this year? And I will bet you very few of you did, but even less of you probably even knew it was available. What I want to make sure is you get that moment, I should have done something, and you go to the website and look it up, because next year it's probably going to be about the same. And you can work with local government to help to do that, to help make yourself eligible for some of these grants. And you'll find it all on this website that I'm giving you. A whole bunch more words that I know you can't read, but it just shows you how many resources that are there for you. And I'm going to keep flipping through here. My name is Kevin Smith. I don't even know if I got to that part in the beginning. I'm actually working as a consultant doing several different projects for nonprofits and other emergency management offices. I look forward to working with you. If I can answer any questions, I'll be happy to, and I'll be here all night. And then you can write me later. There's my contact information. I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Wow. That was awesome. I know it was like a hurricane going through, listening to his information, but that's valuable information that we truly needed. And I want to remind you that this is recorded And your slides will be made available, right? So you don't have to try to read the fine print, because I'm going to go back and look at them myself. Thank you so much for that information. So now that we have the big picture, let's go to our panelists to discuss involvement of the faith community of our local level. We're going to start with the personal preparation and the role of our faith leaders in preparing for hurricane season. So before the storm, we're going to talk to Kevin Chechnik. That's it, right? Almost close. Okay, I'll let you say your name again over the mic. You're the director of the social services for the Salvation Army and has been involved with the response efforts in many disasters throughout the county. So as a hurricane is identified and the threat of the Emergency Management Operations Center, the EOC as we know it, Kevin reports to the EOC and represents the Salvation Army, working with more than 100 other desk officers before, during, and after the EOC. So you've probably seen one of those on TV, where it's robust, people talking on the phone, looking at the monitors. So now, Kevin, I want you to bring us in and tell us what truly happens behind the scenes.
Well, really, as we start talking about being prepared for the storm and before the storm, we in the nonprofit world and the human services world are prepping the community to get ready. We are preparing, working together as a team, opening up shelters, making sure the shelters are prepared, making sure the community is ready for the storm or ready for the event that is going to happen if it's an event we know about ahead of time, like most of ours, hurricanes. So the EOC is activated. Desk officers are asked to come in. We go in, we prepare, we work together, we communicate together. We're in one room together where we can talk to folks face to face, work with folks individually together. And faith communities are an important part of this. We lean on the faith communities to help us. We're asking the faith communities to be prepared ahead of time. Stephanie's going to share some information about what you can do as a faith community to get ready. But really, what I want you to do is stop and think about your faith community. How can you be prepared? What can you do for the community in the time of disaster? And plug in and be ready. Stephanie will share some more information about that. Be prepared, learn, and train. Planning, planning, planning. We plan, we practice, we prepare. You can never be planned enough. You can never be prepared enough. We need to be flexible. We need to be ready to respond in no matter what that happens, no matter how that happens. Faith-based communities will play an important role in preparing, will play a huge role in the response after the event. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, about how you can be prepared and help after the event also. But be prepared now. We need to be prepared in how do we serve the community? How do we feed the community? How can you plug into that? There are folks at the EOC, work for emergency management, that will help us be prepared with mass care. And we're starting to put that puzzle together now at the EOC, and working and doing that and signing up and being prepared to feed the community afterwards, perhaps. And so that's where we are. We're at the EOC, we're getting the community ready for an event that will happen.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for that information. So again, like both Kevin said, the EOC becomes the pulse of our community. So it's a vital part of you getting involved as faith leaders. So we have a call to action. We want to remind everybody to sign up for Feeding Tampa Bay Now. This is a key part of keeping our community and faith groups connected. Faith is a part, and it has a place in the EOC as well. The EOC is housed at the Public Safety Complex, where the 911 is also located. Between the two locations, the amount of stress during these times can be challenging. Milton Smith serves as the emergency responder through the county and has found a way to bring faith-based services to the EOC and the 911. Milt, can you tell us about the unique program? So I should have said, is Milt on? We have a testimony from him. Okay, go ahead, Milt.
Yes, I'm on. Thank you so very much for having me today. I am the founder and president of All First Responders Matter, and within that organization, we was able to establish a chaplaincy program at the EOC and inside the 911 center. And our dispatchers, our call takers, they are the unsung heroes, if you will. They're the ones that I call the very first responders, because they take that phone call during a storm of any type of crisis in order to get those resources out into the community. So they hear the cries from the community first and foremost. First responder matters in placing chaplains inside the EOC and in the 911 center. We look at two different things. We look at having a presence there before a crisis, before the storm, which has been kind of described. So the ministry of presence is something that we practice. And with that ministry of presence, we practice building relationships. So we actually went into the EOC and the 911 center in response to the coronavirus pandemic, when everything started happening there. So we kind of came in the middle of a crisis, if you will. But we was embedded in there 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, and not at the optimal hours, which you might think someone would work. We went in at 2 p.m. and stayed until 10 p.m. But we was able to be there in there with those dispatchers, with those call takers, before the crisis, during the crisis, and after the crisis, because they were continuing to take those 911 calls, those emergency calls throughout, of course, the pandemic and every day, regardless as to what situation was going on. So those chaplains was in there with those 911 operators and in the EOC to walk alongside those that may be experiencing a hard time getting through when they take these phone calls, when they hear the different ones calling for help. And certainly they would hear that during a hurricane of any type of storm they may come this way during this hurricane season. We started off, as I said earlier, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day. We have reduced our presence there now to only a couple of days a week, but those chaplains go in there anywhere from 6 to 8 hours during that week. We find that this program has worked. We find that it has built resiliency within our call takers and dispatchers. We also find that sometimes they call a chaplain now, even if a chaplain is not on duty, if you will, inside the EOC. They will call them when they're off. And we do try to make sure that someone is available for them to talk to. So it's important to have that spiritual presence in there with the 911 dispatchers and operators, so that they'll have someone to lean on rather than having to take that emergency call, hear that cry from the public, and then just roll right and go into the next one. Someone's there for them, and we hope to be there for them throughout hurricane season. Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome, Milt. And you brought up a good point about the chaplains being there in the EOC, not only for the community, but as a conduit and liaison for those that's receiving those calls. And that's so important. We appreciate that feedback that you've given us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we want to continue on. Mary, as a resident, what should we be doing to prepare for the hurricane season? Want to come on up?
I would love to. Thank you very much. No, that's okay. I also hope not to blast you because I've been known to speak a little too loud sometimes myself. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I'm always so honored to be working among the faith-based community leaders and those who work with you and our community leaders. It's so very humbling and so impressive to me and awesome and inspiring that you do so much for the community. You do have so much value and you've done so much. And, just with the coronavirus, this past year, I mean, how involved you've been from having vaccination events to, going and knocking on neighbors' doors to see, if they need help. Registering, to get a vaccination. And we know after disasters, you have a heart for service. And so we're just trying really hard to get together and get that organized and get trained and everything. But one of the biggest values that you do have is that your people listen to you. When people listen to the government, they may really love the government and listen to everything we say. But if their spiritual leader says something, chances are they're going to listen a little bit more, even if they don't see you once a week on a regular basis. If there's something happening, they're going to turn to you. And we want you to have that information for you. We want you to be safe, though. That's the very first thing. No matter, before we do anything else, we need you to survive the storm. We need you to be able to help your membership, your congregations survive the storm too. So we're just going to go really quickly through the basics, okay? A little Hurricane 101. So there's 3 things that we talk about. It's know your risk, make a plan, and stay informed. It's really the only 3 things you have to remember, even though it seems so complicated, but 3 things. So know your risk. You have storm surge, you have flooding, and you have wind. Your storm surge, life-threatening. The storm surge is what comes in off of the Gulf, is what the wind blows in. It's that dome of water that comes in and covers the land. It comes fast. It's like a roaring river. You cannot run from it. You can't swim in it. When it's really coming at you, you have to be gone. Now, that is not the time to think about what you are going to do. And that's why evacuations are so important. Evacuations are based on storm surge. Storm surge, this is Bay County in the Panhandle after Hurricane Michael. This is Mexico Beach, storm surge. I'm going to go through these really quickly. Storm surge. These are houses, okay? I stood there in front of these plots, in front of these stones, these slabs that were literally washed clean by storm surge. And all I could think about was our home. You take it seriously, and I don't want to be scaring people, but this is the reason that we talked about evacuations. We just want you to be safe. We want you to get out of harm's way so then we can deal with the recovery and with all the services that come afterwards. So know where you're going, know your evacuation zone. You can look up your evacuation zone online and we'll give you that information. So that's number 1. Number 2 is your wind. And that's where the categories come in. When you hear Cat 1, 2, 3, that's based on wind. This is what Hurricane Michael did in the Panhandle. That's the wind. It looks like a giant weed whacker going right down the highway. It was unbelievable. All the trees, knocks down all the trees. Just bent the metal. We sure have enough of that around here. Don't underestimate a tropical storm. So many people say, oh, it's only a Cat 2, it's only a Cat 1, it's only a tropical storm. In 2017, Hurricane Irma only brought tropical storm force winds to Pinellas County. If you lived here and then, I know you have stories about Irma. Everybody does. over 350,000 people lost power. And I don't know how long you were without power, but I'm sure you were one of them. Tornadoes. They come during hurricanes. They can come on a summer afternoon in one of our storms. This one came during Nestor. We had a tornado warning, and we had 50-mile-an-hour winds. And it ripped through some buildings in Seminole and a mobile home park. So know what to do, know how to protect yourself when a tornado's coming. And we always say, get in, get down, get help, or cover up. Flood, what'd your other things? A storm surge, wind, and then flood. Flooding also, you want to take very seriously. Remember, every single storm is different. So you have to listen to the news, listen to emergency management, listen to your meteorologists, because one event might be a lot of flood, one event might be a lot of wind. Michael was a lot of storm surge. Okay, Florence was a lot of flooding. So, and wind, well, wind was Michael. I'm sorry, Florence was the flooding. And it's two very different looking events. Every single property in Pinellas County is in a flood zone. Okay, so check out your flood zone, different from your evacuation zone, and talk to your insurance agent and make sure you have enough insurance. After recently Tropical Storm Eta, there's a lot of people, they didn't get the help they thought they were going to get because they didn't have everything on their policy that they thought they had. So be very careful and choose wisely. This was from Florence. And here's Eta. This was just in November. That kind of hit a lot of us by surprise, right? This is Gulf Boulevard and Madeira Beach. The storm surge came in from the Bayside. It was high tide. And it rained really hard. And before we knew it, the water was covering Gulf Boulevard. Lots of flooding, lots of damage. I want to say 60 homes in Madeira Beach being demolished because of it. And that's from Eta. And afterwards, to a lot of houses with rugs out front, big pods out front, furniture out front. And we were turning to Salvation Army and other social services to help these folks because we had to deal with it locally. And that's the type of thing that we turn to you for as well. But I'm going to stick to personal because I'm running through this quickly. It's a lot of information to learn, but it's not really that hard when you just pare it down. So once you know your evacuation zone, you know your flood zone, you've looked at the building that you call home, and you assess it for the wind. If it's one of those old shaky buildings, you probably don't feel safe there. So you take those things into consideration, and then you make a plan. You figure out what you're going to do. Are you going to stay in your home, or are you going to evacuate? Some people are going to evacuate if it's a major storm because they're in a C zone, and they can stay there, if it's a tropical storm. But you have to look at your own, and you have to figure it out, and you have to start making a plan based on that. You have options. You can go out of town, but if you do that, go early. I know if you're in well, maybe you were one in Hurricane Irma on the roads. They couldn't get the gas delivered fast enough for everyone. You don't want to be out on 75 in the middle of a hurricane. So make sure that you get out early enough and you're prepared to get back in case reentry is tough. You can stay in a hotel or a motel. Okay, make sure that you call ahead, that you still have a vacancy. If you have pets, a lot of times your hotels change their policy. So call, but have a couple of plans, have backup plans. Make sure you bring your kits. Don't depend on a hotel to feed you and give you drinks and make you comfortable in air conditioning because they're going to be out of power too. And most of their people are going to be home. They're not going to be working. So if you're going out of town, you're staying at a hotel, be self-sustaining. Always take care of yourselves and your family. Or a host home. Stay over a friend and families that are non-evacuation. That's really the best bet. And if you live in an non-evacuation area and you have a safe home, invite people over. Better yet, if you have a house of worship that can house people safely, contact us and maybe you could be a shelter. or take your congregation in. We'll hear about that in a couple of minutes. A public shelter, if you have nowhere else to stay or your congregants have nowhere else to stay, tell them to go to a public shelter. Just go prepared. You know, it's not the Ritz. So bring something to do. Bring eye coverings, earplugs, you know, whatever you need. Bring a mask, you know, some sanitizer, but go there realizing it's loud, it's noisy. The lights are on all night long. Just go there knowing that, and it's going to be not that comfortable. But don't stay home because you don't want to go to a public shelter. That's what scares me sometimes when people hear about the shelters. We have special needs shelters for people with minimal medical needs or with people who depend on power for life-sustaining equipment. And we have pet-friendly shelters for people who have dogs and cats. Again, you have to bring everything for them too. You have to think about everybody in your family. And whether they're at home, whether you're bringing them on the road or bringing them to a pet-friendly shelter, make sure they have their license and you have all their food and everything that they're going to need. So we do have public facilities and services available for those who really don't have anywhere to go. And then build your kit. What are you going to need? I'm not going to go through all this. A lot of it is just common sense. But think about this. If you're going to evacuate, you're hopefully going to be able to come back home. So you're going to need stuff there too. So if you're going to leave your home, leave home evacuation kit, a tarp, some tape, extra non-perishables, extra water, that sort of thing. So you have something to come home to. And then prepare your home. Again, it's common sense stuff. Cover your windows. Doesn't have to be expensive shutters, but do that now. Take care of that now. If you have to get plywood, like I did, you know, buy it, cut it, get the little naily things that go around your windows. It's not hard, but it takes a while to do. And so you just, it's preparing ahead of time. So also knowing what to expect helps you to prepare, because then you get these things in your home, you get ready for them. So just expect during the storm at a certain point, say 40 miles per hour, sometimes it's just a little bit more, but your emergency vehicles are going to come off of the road because it's just not safe for them either. So when we have a beginning time for evacuation and an ending time for evacuation, that means we want you to be in your safe spot by the end of that evacuation. You're out of the way of storm surge, you're safe from the wind, you're safe from the flooding. And once those emergency responders are taken off the road, that's it. You're on your own. So you need to be in that place and be ready. You're going to lose cable. Just expect the worst, okay? So if you have cable, great. You know, you can watch your TV. But just depend on losing all of those services and what are you going to do to get through that? You know, if you lose your sewer service, what are you going to do in the meantime? It's not that hard, but you need to figure it out ahead of time. And then after the storm, you know, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but, you know, just stay safe. That's the biggest part of after the storm. And, you know, building stronger. You know, if you get flood damage or other damage, your roof falls off, don't just fix it. Okay, make it better. And as a community, we're trying to look at ways that we can make this community stronger. We're going to look into these grants so we can make more buildings stronger, more resilient. You know, so we're looking at that. How can we help ourselves locally? What can we do now? And when things do happen, how can we build back stronger? So that we're getting better and just helping each other. And I don't have to tell you this. I speak to groups and it's like, help each other, help your neighbor, check on them. Well, I don't have to tell you that. You can tell me how to do that. And, you know, it just means so much, you know, every little thing that you can do or that your membership can do, and calling each other and just taking care of each other. And then taking that next step when you're ready and when you can, and doing more. Helping your congregation plan maybe now and get together of what else that you can do to help the whole community. So make a plan, pledge to plan. That's what we're asking you to do, is go online and take a pledge, pinellascounty.org/emergency, just real short form, hit submit, and you take that first step to say, yes, I will plan. So thank you again so much for all that you do.
That was awesome. A lot of things went through my mind when you were saying that. You put it at a personal level, but we as faith leaders, we also put it towards our congregations now, getting that wood, now getting that stuff. You know, COVID kind of stifled us where we're kind of tunnel vision, but I'm glad you kind of shook us out of that to get us prepared, because June 1st will be right around the corner. And we were blessed last year with the storm, so let's not get complacent because we weren't hit so hard. So thank you, Mary, for that. So we have another call to action to alert your Pinellas newsletters. So the Pinellas County has newsletters that will go out. Mary also talked about the pledge to plan. Go out and make sure we do that. Every speaker and presenter tonight has talked about planning, and that is one of the key things to being successful as we come into the season. Now we have Stephanie. So Stephanie, tell us, what should we be doing as leaders to prepare for hurricane season? You want to come up, or you want to
Oh, good here.
Okay.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to share. And as we're talking about all of this, and as we're talking as a faith community, like I know, like I'm on staff at Calvary Church, and you know, we have weekly services staring us in the face every single week. And so I know for a lot of people in the faith community, like we talk about this subject and it's like, oh, I've got to add one more thing to my to-do list. And sometimes it's hard to carve out time for that, especially when we talk about something on this magnitude, like responding to a hurricane. But what I would like, as we were talking, like the one thing that I would really love to communicate is that partnerships are the key. Partnerships are the key to all of this. And if we have really good partners that we're working with, it makes hurricane response. I mean, first of all, it is a team effort, but you don't have to shoulder the burden of preparing and responding to a storm alone. Like partnerships are the key. And even tonight, as we talked, like as I'm talking to faith leaders here in the Pinellas County area, the first thing to do is know your contact with Pinellas County. Like find your contact. And tonight's the perfect night for you to identify the one person with Pinellas County Emergency Management that's going to be your go-to. So as a faith leader, find your contact. Secondly, there's kind of two things that I want to talk about, like as we have looked at storms, how we have prepared. And I kind of think about it in two ways. And we need to prepare our congregation for the storm. So we're doing some of this legwork on the front end, but we also need to prepare our congregation to respond after the storm. So we kind of have to be thinking about both of those on the front end. And now's the perfect time to be doing that. So as we talk about, let's talk about that first thing, preparing your congregation for the storm. There's some super practical things that we all can be doing, pragmatic things on the front end, like simple things like, do you have, a list of all your membership database? Is there redundancy in that? Like, don't keep that on the one computer that's in the building that might get flooded out in a storm. So there's practical things like that we can be doing. So making sure that we have the documentation that we're going to need post-storm, whatever that might be, insurance information, again, membership information, etc. Make sure that we have that secured. Make sure we have redundancy in that. Also, be sure that we're communicating, like have a plan of communication put in place beforehand to how you're going to talk to your congregations, how you're going to communicate to them, what is their evacuation zone. And I forget who mentioned it, like we as faith leaders our congregants have trust in us. And so I really think that there's an onus on us to communicate the seriousness of a lot of these storms. Like we are in a position of privilege to say, no, take this seriously, please. Like make sure you're informed, make sure that you are, prepared yourself. So let's see here. The other thing to prepare our congregation for the storm is to think about, like, let's inventory the resources that we have as a congregation. And I'm not talking just financial or structural resources. Your people are, quite honestly, probably your best resource. And so let's, like, before the storm, let's be thinking about, like, what resources do we have as a congregation that we can mobilize? Even before the storm, or even after the storm. One of preparing before the storm, like preparing our congregation, might be getting with other people in the faith community, and swapping notes, making sure that churches down the street are taken care of, or congregations close by. Again, partnerships are key throughout this. So we talk about preparing your congregation for the storm, and we also want to talk about the second thing, preparing your congregation to go. We as faith leaders, I think all of us can agree that we have a heart to love and to serve and to help others. And so we want to take care of our own, but we also want to equip our people to go out into the community after the storm and to serve others. And again, the theme being partnership is the key. You don't have to shoulder this burden alone. You don't have to be thinking, how in the world am I going to get people from my congregation trained, equipped? Where do I buy chainsaws? Like, do I have to even be worrying about that? Partnerships are the key in this. And there's great organizations that you can partner with. Kevin here from Salvation Army is doing a training. I'm going to check my notes right here. He's doing a training called Preparing Your Congregation for Disaster. Can't get more on point than that. And it's Thursday, June 3rd. So we've got organizations like the Salvation Army that you can plug your people into. Like, it's like a turnkey operation. They train your volunteers. They help deploy your volunteers. Southern Baptist Disaster Relief does the same thing. There's other great organizations that do that, so you don't have to bear that burden alone. Let's see here. The other thing, and we all know this intellectually, but sometimes we need to fast track the application of this. We really need to know our neighbors. We need to know the communities in which we work and where our congregations are located. And that starts today. That starts before hurricane season. That starts, doing simple things like, partnering with local schools, building relationships through local schools. It's building relationships with local government. It can take on a variety of looks, but building relationships, with folks in our community. So we know, we know, hey, I got a community right across the bridge that is an underserved community in Pinellas County. And so, like, our church right now, like, we try to build relationships there. Like, we know who the community leaders are. We know what schools are there, so that we're looking out for each other, post storm. And so that's a lot. Like, we're all communicating a lot here, but my takeaway, if I can tell you two things, just know your contact, with Pinellas County Emergency Management, and find one person in your congregation. If you can find one person in your congregation to help you champion this cause, and plug in with partnerships, like, responding in a storm is doable. And it doesn't have to be something that you react to. It can be something that you're proactive as a congregation in response. So.
Wow, I can listen to you all talk all night because I think this is so critically important. And it just brings so much back. I do want to ask Kevin, I saw that the flyer will be sent out. Is there another training? Is just June 3rd, or do you have more scheduled?
The Salvation Army, if you go to disaster.salvationarmyusa.org, all of our trainings are listed there. We do trainings all the time. We have several scheduled in person right now, plus the June 3rd, Preparing Your Congregation for Disaster trainings. If you're interested in training, reach out to me. I would be more than happy to schedule a special event just for you also. We have spiritual trainings, ministry presence trainings. We have opportunities for ministry for all faiths, and we can plug you in and get those done.
Okay, I thought that was very important because as my mind was going, I know COVID changed the scope of what shelters would look like. vaccinated versus unvaccinated, children versus, so that is very important. And I hope that's brought out in some of the training, so some of our faith leaders can also be prepared as we open up as shelters. We now want to hear a personal story of the Calvary becoming a post-storm shelter. I don't know if that's a testimonial. So in Indian Rocks Baptist has also been involved with becoming a base for the beach municipalities, the EMS, and even hosted the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who, with their Blue Roof program after the Hurricane Irma came through in 2017. Jerry, your congregation goes a step further, don't they? So if Jerry's on, is Jerry queued
Yes.
up? Hi, Jerry.
Yes, thank you. Indian Rocks Baptist Church was provided with an opportunity to serve the community when Hurricane Irma came through, and it found itself surrounded by mobile home parks that many had difficulty leaving, evacuating. So what we did, what the church ended up doing, was hosting an open doors hurricane vigil 24/7. And the invitation went out to mobile homes that backed into the church and offered them basically shelter at the church. But it was a vigil, 24-hour hurricane vigil that it was called. So many mobile home park folks that weren't even part of the church, members of the church, took us up on that and came over. We had approximately 200 folks from the mobile home park, and we fed them and we gave them water, we gave them shelter, and they stayed there for about 2 weeks. So we provided that service to them as a host shelter, and that was impromptu. It wasn't anything planned. It was just a need that we saw that had to happen. So we opened up the doors, put the word out, and that's how that came about.
Thank you.
I'm thinking other churches can do likewise.
That's awesome. And that's one of the things Stephanie talked about. I know I'm from South St. Pete. We have a cluster of churches, and just having that connection would be so impactful, because I live in a hurricane zone. So there may be another church that I could connect to that can take care of my congregation. So that's so vitally important, and I appreciate you all bringing that up for us to think about. So we have Yaridis. I get it right? Yes. Okay. Yaridis, how can an organization help the community prepare for hurricane season?
Thank you so much. And Stephanie, I think you were reading my script, but it's okay. My work is community work, and what you said is exactly what I'm sharing with you tonight. Know your community, who lives in that community. Make an assessment of the need of that community. And when you have all that information, then you have your the information available and the resources based on the need of that particular community. Finding that natural leader, I call them natural leader. Every community has that person that they're doing the work. They don't call themselves leaders, but they're the ones that the community trusts. When you find that person and you have the right information, they will be the ambassadors and they will bring that information to the community. I want to share with you, last year during the pandemic, we have a growing Latino community in Pinellas County. And we know that most of the time the information gets to the Latino community through community events. We go in person, we have community fairs. We couldn't do that last year because of the pandemic. We thought, created a collaborative called Abrazo a la Distancia, or Virtual Hug Task Force. And it's a group of leaders, and a lot of you that are here today are part of that collaborative. And what we did is through Zoom, we have now technology available to us. We put together different webinars to reach out the Latino community. And one of those webinars were about hurricane preparedness. But we did the webinars in Spanish. We brought all the information in Spanish. And one of the coolest things that we did, actually the facilitator, because we have families there, the dad, the mom, the kids were there. We have a scavenger hunt in there, through Zoom. And we asked them, go around your house and see how many supplies you have in case that you have a hurricane right now. It was amazing to see not only the adults, but the children. They were so happy when they said, I won, now we prepare for the hurricane. So with that, I just want to share with you that by thinking outside of the box, engaging the community, bringing isolated community like the Latino community, breaking the language barrier, that is a key component when you want to share anything in the community. Help them register, assisting them with anything that they need, finding information, have the evacuation maps and the hurricane guide in their language. Could be, in Spanish, we have Vietnamese. Have information about shelters available in Pinellas County. I always say that Pinellas County is rich in resources, but if the community doesn't know, we can have all the resources in the world. It's just making sure that those resources are available to the community. If they need transportation, let them know where they can go for transportation, shelters, making sure that they have the hurricane supplies. And one important thing is, please make sure that you have translation and interpretation services available in your programs. Even if you know the language, I can say by personal experience, I speak English with an accent, and I'm proud of it. But I'd rather have every information that is important for me in my language. So make sure that you have those services in there. And just remember, a well-informed community is a very prepared community.
Thank you. That was powerful. One of the things we don't think about is the language barriers. So presenters, volunteers, translators need to get the information out, work on evacuation shelters and in food pantries and everywhere. I know when the pandemic hit, we found out some of our elderly, we had a digital inclusion. They weren't able to log on. They weren't able to communicate. They don't have the smartphones. They still have the little flip phones. So that's some of the things that we still need to take into consideration for hurricanes, especially with our elderly. So thank you for that. And I'm gonna try that scavenger hunt thing. That's very creative. So we have with us Cameron Lake from Mount Moriah AME in Tarpon Springs to share her experience with volunteering to bring outreach materials to the community. Carmen, is it Carmen? I'm sorry. Is Carmen on?
Right here. Can you see me?
Okay, now we can.
I'm waving my hand.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Great. I'm Carmen Lake with Mount Moriah AME Church here in Tarpon Springs, where the Reverend Kelvin Price is the pastor and Reverend Marissa Price is associate pastor. And in 2019, our mission group came together and we had this nice meeting talking about our plan. We were planning for the fiscal year 2019-2020. And we thought we were planning for 2019-2020. But in March, the pandemic threw a curve in our plan. So in that meeting, we only thought about the vulnerable seniors and just the special needs community and what we could do for them in a small way. But when March hit, the onset of the pandemic, we had to revisit that plan and buff it up. And with the help of Pinellas County Emergency Management, Mary and Jess, they helped us to put together the hurricane kits for those seniors. And not only were they seniors that we had to help and visit and make sure that they had everything that they needed, not just for the pandemic, but we thought, okay, we're in Florida. Now we got a double whammy, the pandemic and hurricane season. So we decided to get with the Pinellas County Emergency Management, let them know how many seniors that we were aware of that were isolated and probably not being visited or would not otherwise have a hurricane kit or any other kind of kit. So we got together with the Pinellas County Emergency Management, we got the kits, and thanks to Jess and Mary, everything that we thought of in our meeting was in the kit. We just added a few other things because of the pandemic to make it a versatile kit. So the vulnerable community or special needs community, it was so many different residents that we visited and we talked to. And like you say, they didn't go on Zoom because they didn't know about Zoom, and they still have the flip phone, just like you said. And some don't have a phone, some still have a landline. And just to see our faces delivering those kits, I was just amazed at how receptive they were of us during the pandemic. And the ones who were not home, we left the kits like on the porch where they could see the kits when they walked up, and left a little note. And by our surprise, they called and they were very emotional, just thanking us for the kit. And these people literally read the front of the bag to let us know that it was Pinellas County Emergency Management. And I said, yes, it was a collaborative effort between Pinellas County Emergency Management and Mount Moriah AME Church. And we did our best to get to every special needs and senior citizen in the community that we knew about. And so many of the ladies in the group, they're homegrown here, so they knew they knew where the residents were that would need the hurricane kits. And some of them told us it was the first time that they'd ever had a hurricane kit. And they were so smart. They said, we're gonna leave it by the door because we have our other papers and we can set that by the door too. So when hurricane season comes, we're good to go. All we have to do is pick it up and go to wherever we would be going with the caseworker or with the person that was taking care of them, or a relative or friend, whoever would be taking them to a shelter or a home with them. And we thought, we need to do this again in 2021. And some of them have even asked us now, do you plan to do what you did last year? Because we used some of our items for the pandemic, for pandemic's sake, why not? And they're looking forward to hurricane kits. And our list is growing, Jess and Mary. Thank you, Pinellas County Emergency Management.
Thank you, Carmen, for that. I know she mentioned the elderly and the disadvantaged. I know some of the outreach programs do the homeless, and that's one of the populations we truly do not want to forget in networking. I love how Jerry said they opened up the trailer homes, but let us think outside the box also for those that's in our community. So thank you again for providing that.
And we had to get to those who couldn't go out and actually pick up a kit. So that was why we did what we did, because we knew they wouldn't be able to get out and go pick up a kit. So we took it to them.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Now we're going to shift to during the storm. Preparation is so important. And once the storm is here, it's too late. So let's talk about what happens in the EOC and the county during a hurricane. So Kevin Smith, we're going to, during the storm, EOC 101, is that right? Coming up?
I think we're going to go with Kevin Chinault.
Okay.
Okay. Whoever wants to talk.
We'll do the Kevin tag team here.
Go ahead.
So
Kevin
really,
Kevin.
during the storm in the Emergency Operations Center, there's a lot going on. But what I want to let you know really is it's preparation. We need to know in the Emergency Operations Center what your faith community is doing. Because when the storm hits, it is too late. We need to know where people are. If something happens, we need to be able to know that. So make sure you've let people know if you're going to be a shelter. Register as a shelter so that we know that they're there. Because once the storm hits, emergency responders are not going to be responding. Everybody is buckling down. We can be checking in with the shelters to make things are okay. If something happens, you're not going to get help. The only help that's coming may be over the telephone to be able to jerry-rig things and make things work. And that happens. We're there. We can work together to make things happen. But we need to know you're there, so you need to communicate ahead of time.
Can I ask questions?
Of course.
He brought something up in my mind. Do you find that churches or places of worship kind of have a fear of signing up as a shelter? And how do you give them confidence to put their name on there to open up to the community?
One thing is, especially with the Pinellas County, if you're going to be a registered shelter, you need to be doing it ahead of time, because Pinellas County is going to come inspect your facility. They're going to make sure that your facility is able to withstand the storms. And they're going to know how many people can stay in your facility. So all of that can be done ahead of time. Yes, it's a process that needs to be gone through. And yes, some congregations and faith communities may not be able to do it, but we can work with you. Mary or others with the county will go do that site visit, and they will work with you to determine whether you can actually do it.
Thank you. I thought that was important because some small churches may want to be that facility. However, you may have other churches in that community that you can partner on different things. So thanks for explaining that. Now, Mary, can you talk about safety a little bit for us?
Sure. And I wanted to just tag on to that a little bit. If you have, like you said, a small church, you could be a shelter just for your own congregation and their families.
Okay.
But we want to know that too, because, you need food, you need something, you need to know how to contact us. We have a faith-based liaison in the EOC, just for this purpose. So, we want to be in touch with you, even if it's on that small scale. So during this storm, we do have a county information center, and it's based in the EOC, and it's for the public to call and ask questions, and we get calls from everyone. And during this storm, we continue to get calls. And again, like Kevin said, the emergency responders are not responding. And right upstairs is 911, and they have to take the calls, of people and, tell them, I'm sorry, we can't come out to help you. But, if you do have an emergency during this time, still call 911 because they will, take your information. And if it's, they do have doctors there, they may be able to, talk you through some things. So we do want you to do that. And also I wanted to mention with that county information line, we also have a live chat that you can text questions to. And a lot of times your texts work when other cell service does not. So that is a good option. Also, you can text 911. And we work with the deaf and hard of hearing community as well. So that's a very good, service for our deaf community to know about too. And also, when doing videos and, that sort of thing of, to get a American Sign Language interpreter because, the deaf, hard of hearing and the blind, low vision, again, part of that whole community is helping the people, the vulnerable people, those isolated populations. And, basically during the storm, as far as safety goes, just stay put. Stay where you are, stay safe, bunker down, get in that safe room in the middle of your house, and don't go out roaming around.
Right. Thank you for that. There's a lot of incidents where people thought it was okay to walk through the water, got electrocuted. So that's so important to remember after the storm. during the storm, stay put and wait till it's declared safe. So I want to take a minute. We had Glendy, I think it is, wants to share an experience with their organization that volunteered during the public shelter during Hurricane Irma. Do we have Glendy on the line?
You hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. Hi. Okay, good. Okay, so first of all, I really want to thank Mary and Jess for giving me the opportunity and inviting me to be part of this. I really wanted to tell you that as in charge of the volunteer ministers of the Church of Scientology, we really take seriously the disaster response efforts that we did, specifically in Irma here locally. I wanted to give you a few facts. We activated over 740 volunteers. We boarded over 600 windows. It was about 80 stores here locally, serve over 10,000 meals around in the local community as well. In shelter, over 300 pets. And we did a lot, and definitely what I really wanted to tell you is that the volunteers that participated at this, they were very encouraged, and there's nothing more fulfilled than to help others, specifically in these at that moment. It was really, as Mary was saying, there were people with no electricity, et cetera. So the help provided at that time, it was really very encouraging for the volunteers. We actually met people that we never really met before. After that, people continue, volunteering. We actually did around only 2 weeks, actually 73,000 hours of volunteering. So I was thinking about what Kevin earlier said in the beginning. I was like, okay, well, good. So I'm a millionaire then, because, with all those hours. But no, really, the work of the volunteer, it was very important. So I really wanted to, encourage everyone. We really need to get out there and then get involved. I'm telling my volunteers, we need to be registered. We need to really find out what will be needed at that point so that we can actually be of help. And really, as the founder of Scientology, Mr. Haber, he says a being is only as valuable as he can help others. So I really feel like you guys and I were very valuable, because obviously we are serving, and that's what we want to do. So I really want to encourage everyone, and we are here. Anything that's needed and wanted, I definitely want to work with you guys to really make sure we're really prepared. So I really want to say that.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Appreciate that. That's a lot of hours. So I saw the $1 trillion go over my head, dollar sign. So that's awesome.
That's
and
right.
We appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
So we want to fast forward a little bit, and we want to talk about, what do our faith-based communities do after the storm? Now, we've gone before, we've gone to during, and now we're going to jump to after the storm. So we're going to ask Stephanie. We're going to talk about property, people, and what you do over there.
Wonderful. Okay, after the storm, and I want to kind of again frame this in two different ways. We want to, after the storm, take an inventory of our people, and that's why it's critical to have like databases of your congregants, and ways, like be thinking ahead about ways that we can communicate with them, because we want to check on our folks. And one thing we did, actually we did this during COVID, but we've done it during storms as well. We called all of our senior adults. So we just pulled up everybody's number. We got a bunch of volunteers, and we called all of our senior adults to make sure that they were okay and that they had what they needed. And really, like, again, people are our greatest resource. And we have this workforce that we can deploy as volunteers. And so one way, again, is put people to work after the storm. checking on your folks, but we also want to check on our neighbors as well, and serve them after the storm. And that's where, like, we were talking about with like Kevin and this team training, it's deploying teams of volunteers into the community to do cleanup work for our neighbors. And so that's two great ways to deploy your greatest resource post storm. Call your senior adults, your at-risk population, and check on them, and have those teams trained and ready to deploy after the storm to do cleanup. And so I would just great experiences doing that. And again, like we all agree, like that we want to be able at the drop of the hat to be able to serve and love our neighbors. And so that's two ways that we can do that.
Awesome. Thank you. I can just see the mindset of your volunteers and the work and effort that you put into it. So we appreciate it. And we're going to take that energy with us. Next, from our community perspective, tell me, how can our faith-based organization assist in our communities? So Yaridis, we want to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, as Stephanie mentioned, doing the wellness check is really important. And if you are a large organization or a large church and you have the resources, maybe partnering with the small churches to do those wellness checks with your congregation. But that relationship has to start before the storm. So again, establishing relationship, the trust has to be before the storm, because maybe after the storm, it will be really hard to communicate. The last point that I would like to make is make sure that you update your information in the church information, your organization information via the Pinellas County Emergency Management website. This information is updated every year, and it's very important because there you will find resources before, during, and after the storm. The link to this survey will be included on the guide that will be shared with you after this program. So please make sure you go to the website and update the information, because it's key to keep this information up to date.
Thank you. I just want to add to remind your congregation, I know we're in a season of vaccination. So this may be a great way for our to deliver that message of vaccination. You may have to go into a shelter if you're not vaccinated. What does that look like, especially for our elderly and those that's going to be volunteering? So that would be a great push and a message to get out to them. I know I've been pushing it in our community, so I just wanted to layer that on with our hurricane preparedness, because we've seen emergencies where, that whole spacing thing has gone out the window, and now what does that look like for us now? So thank you all for your information. We want to take time now to thank our panelists for your helpful information, assisting our community for the before, after, and during, or before, during, and after the storm. A final reminder, please send in your questions via the question and answer in the chat feature. I'm not sure. I'll take a pause. Do we have any questions that's come through? Okay, so I'm assuming everybody's been well informed. If you still have questions, you have time. Does anybody in our audience, did you fill out those cards? No, but you're eating those snacks. I see it. Well, it's been very enlightening, very educational, and very knowledgeable about getting us prepared. So we've heard from many faith-based organizations and how we can get involved, how we can assist our communities before, during, and after the emergencies. I would like to thank Kevin Smith, back up. Come on, back up to share your experiences in working with this community. So give us some of your final tips without like the pastor link, but maybe they want to hear more from you.
Sorry, I'm going to fall over. And I tell you, many people are probably sitting there right now and it's drinking from a fire hose, right? We've hit them with so much information and people are going, where do I start next? And the most important thing is that you are a conduit to your congregation. And let me just tell you, as much as I love what Pinellas County is doing here, Pinellas County really reaches out during times of disaster to assess what the community is doing. But I think everyone in Pinellas County will tell you, everyone that works in government will say that's not their expertise. Their expertise is not serving others and knowing where need is. That's why they're so interested in partnering with you as faith-based organizations, because you serve that need every day. You know the people in your congregation because you did your call down list. You know who is in need. You don't have to go serve across the country where there's need because you know there's need in your congregation. And then if you are in your congregation and that your congregation is good to go and no one is in need in your congregation, then you can go and serve the needs of another congregation where there is. And I love what you're doing in bringing the faith community together. I love the tools that you've brought to the table to share with others. And I'm excited to be here. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Kevin, could you just share with us real quick some information about FEMA reimbursements?
Sure. One of the things that we look at the opportunity for houses of worship to get assistance after a disaster, and for the most part, unless it is damages to your facility where you have actually can apply for what's called a public assistance grant, there isn't money to actually pay for your work for volunteers that come in. So I said that volunteers have a value of $23 an hour for the work that they have done. That is very important because it helps offset some of the government costs. That's one of the reasons we're asking you to do so much. And we're asking you to let us know what you're doing across the community. But there is the opportunity to work as a partnership. If you are a congregation that can serve a meal during a disaster, there are some ways that FEMA can reimburse the county to work with you to purchase the food. You know, we have organizations like the Salvation Army and the Southern Baptists who know how to produce large amounts of meals for a massive audience. But they're not necessarily the experts that can serve 50 different variety of meals to make them kosher or halal or some other dietary needs. But there are congregations in this community who can do that for their community or reaching out to serve in others. And if that's the case, and you know ahead of time that that's the need that you can fill, then there's possibly ways that emergency management can help to put you in the plan as a meal provider and help to cover some of those food costs. And as we do that and the community comes together and builds that capability, then we're looking at some real significant resilience in this community, especially in times where folks are fighting to get a meal. Now that can't be done just on a whim, and it can't be done afterwards and saying, well, we did this, so you need to give us money. It's not how it works. It actually has to be in a plan that actually says we are going to provide this, and this is how we will work as government to help to reimburse you through some federal grant programs. So I encourage you, not only reach out, build within your congregations, but make sure you're working alongside with Pinellas County Emergency Management, because they do have tools and resources that can help you do more to serve those in need. Is that a good answer, Kevin?
Thank you, Kevin.
Good. Thank you.
And really, after the storm is when things really pick up for the faith community. That's when the faith community can be the biggest help in the community. There's going to be a lot of distributions through points of distribution, water, meals ready to eat, things like that are going to be distributed. And the EOC is going to need to know what's going on so we can communicate that with the community. The EOC is going to be your communication point following the storm to help spread out where's those meals going to be served. We don't want to be serving a meal on one corner and another agency serving a meal on another. So we at the EOC is going to be working to partner together to make sure we're reaching the communities in need.
Yeah, and you talk about how the congregations are putting this plan together and coordinating with the EOC. One of the things that I know the houses of worship do is they have people that come to them and say, we want to help as a congregation. We want to contribute in some way. Okay, say you didn't plan and you didn't listen to anything that was just said today. We know that even if you don't, your congregation is going to want to help. The question is how? Well, I can give you the answer on how not to help. Don't collect used clothing and pile it up in your church for delivery. Now, if you want to help contribute to the community everyday needs, and you want to gather those clothing up and donate it to the Salvation Army or Goodwill or a thrift program near you, that is a great way to help. But it's not the most effective way to help during times of disaster. But what may be a good way to help is maybe you do a fundraiser, maybe you sell some clothing or go out and pull things together and then do a yard sale. Take that money and give it to the organizations who are fighting on the front lines, who are helping people through that long-term recovery. The truth is, as good as it feels to take that used clothing or a bottle of water, does anybody know how many different sizes of bottles of water there are? I can tell you disaster after disaster. I still haven't counted how many different sizes of bottles of water, and they do not stack evenly when you bring them up one at a time. And that overwhelms the community and often becomes what they call the second disaster. So the more you're engaged now as to how you can contribute, how you can plan for donating responsibly after the disaster, the faith community are the ones who hear from how can we help. The best way to do that is coordinating with the EOC or with key organizations who already have experienced that and know how to help most, like Salvation Army, Red Cross, working with the Baptists, working with many of our church groups who are on the front lines, helping disaster folks recover after disaster.
You know, we have a couple other ways that people can help as well with the donations and volunteers. We will, if it was a major event, have a volunteer reception center open, which does just that, organizes the volunteers, the people who just show up, usually from out of state, you know, because they want to help, and the donations and working with agencies. And we can use people there to help us with that, to help staff. We have a handful of staff that can do that. So, you know, also if you want to help us by working in a shelter, we're accepting those volunteers. You know, we're seeking those volunteers this year. You know, and the other thing is too, if we were hit with a major storm, even when I was up at Bay County, at a certain point, the schools want to reopen, and that's where most of our evacuation shelters are. So what do you do when you want the kids to go back in school, which is helpful because it helps the parents and, you know, who need to help fix their house and go to work. But then what happens if their home is not habitable? So we're looking to identify some post-storm evacuation shelters. And it could be a church, it doesn't have to be a big church, you know, who could house and shelter a smaller group of people, but from the neighborhood. So they go home and work on their house and meet the contractors or whatever it is they need to do. But this is really a need in our community. And I think it's one that is not an impossible task to get some locations to say, yes, we can do that. And work with us, and we would support that, you know, with whatever it is that the services that you know would need at that time, whether it be food or, you know, otherwise. So those are some really concrete things that that you could do, and keep that in mind afterwards as well. And you can reach us in the Emergency Operations Center. And we have the faith liaison in there as well. So if all else fails, you can call the County Information Center and they will get you to the right person.
Thank you. So much valuable information tonight. We're going to hear one last testimony from Pastor or Reverend Irvie. It said, though the hurricanes are focal points for our community for this time of year, disasters can come in many forms, as well as we know during this year of COVID. Our faith-based communities played a big part in all types of disasters. So Pastor Irvie's here to share about setting up the vaccination events to multiple churches. Are you there, Reverend Irvie?
I am indeed. I just wanted to say thank you for this really rich dialogue, and the conversation and information has been kind of like drinking from the fire hose, which is a good thing, because we get to process it and we'll look forward to the video and the links. Two things that really stand out for me, actually three, so I won't be like preaching on Sunday morning, have multiple closes. The big takeaway has to be the fact that we never plan to fail. We just often fail to plan. We never set out to fail. I don't think anybody gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to blow it today. But the reality is that both on the front end, before the storm and after the storm, we do have to have a plan and be willing to work that plan our work and work the plan. We had that as a reality in Pinellas County, and I was fortunate as a pastor and also as a director of community outreach and juvenile intervention for the St. Petersburg Police Department, that we went into action really quickly with the idea in mind that the charity starts at home and then it spreads abroad. And so I was fortunate to be able to leverage the relationships that we had for hurricane evacuation with the fire department, with the EMC, and with the health department to offer our network of services on our Clergy on Call network and our FAST network, some of the folks that are on the line, and as a bridge. We talk about relationships. One other analogy is to be a bridge to bring the ecumenical community together and work for the greater good as we bear one another's burdens. And so we hosted the first pop-up site with the health department, and then we've continued to do that work where we brought vaccinations to the elderly population of 65 plus, and then have now continued that work networking with our Parks and Recreations community. This effort, disasters will come, and the time to build relationships, my third and final point that has been alluded to, is not during the time of crisis, but it's in advance, so that we will be prepared to network. One great analogy is in the last idea is that diversity drives innovations. We've had hurricanes, we've had storms, we've had tragedies, but we have not been, as Yaridis alluded to, we have not been open and inclusive in that process. And one of the things Kevin alluded to that Pinellas County has done to great effectiveness is to expand the idea of resiliency and teamwork. And it's been a pleasure to work with Mary and Jess and her team. And we've done good in saving lives, and everybody out there needs to get vaccinated. That's my final point.
Thank you. I can testify that just having those pop-up sites in our South St. Pete area gave confidence to our people, because there's some hesitancy, but once you open it up and see that there's availability, like Pastor Irby was able to do, more people were more compliant to come in. Like my mother, who's 79, was very hesitant, and it had to be a team effort. You get vaccinated, I get vaccinated. But I took one for the team because I know it's important. And so those efforts, what he talks about in disasters, become monumental for our community. So having those places of faith where people trust us to go and get those kind of services versus going to the health department or, someone that they're not familiar with. Well, my time is up. I tell you what, I want to thank you all for inviting me to be the commentator, the hostess. But I don't know if you've done this before, but I think it's so imperative. And I think it was so important for our faith-based organizations to have this talk, to have this summit, and give us ideas and ways to go forward. I'm thinking in my mind now of making more plans, even though I was in emergency management, but not as a pastor. So it really enlightened my eyes. And hopefully, we had 32 people on, probably more gonna view this. And just reaching out through those communities, we can make a huge difference during this season. And not only this season, but as we prepare. So I want to again thank our panelists. I'm not sure, Mary, if you or Jess have any other closing remarks, but I personally want to say thank you for all the work and the effort you do and the meetings that you have. Now I see how it comes together like glue for our community. So thank you. And I want to thank everybody that joined in via Zoom. Have a great night, and don't forget to send any questions you have, or don't forget to go back and review this recording to get that valuable information. Have a good night.